Hello and welcome to the Irish Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Houghton. I'm an entrepreneur, investor, and financial independence enthusiast, sharing my financial freedom journey. Stay tuned and welcome aboard. I've been thinking a lot recently about the FIRE movement, or at least the traditional FIRE movement. There seems to be a heap of content at the moment around this concept of alternative FIRE movements. And look, we just had Anders on the last episode there talking about Coast-Fi, and truthfully, I was quite envious. I have been working extremely hard for the last 18 months or so, and I'm pleased to report that I'm almost at the end of doing that. One of the projects that I'm currently working on is due to finish up at the end of April, which ties nicely into the fact that we should, by then, be close to hitting the €400,000 mark on our portfolio, which is massive, especially when you consider that we only crossed the €300,000 mark back in October last year. I've also been giving thought recently to the fact that we now have 3 investment properties, and I'm thinking that one more should do us. And as tempting as it is to continue to buy, there's also a little bit of stress that comes with that, and we could possibly be over leveraging ourselves, particularly when it comes to interest rates at the moment. So we're thinking that 4 might be the golden number for us, and that rather than needing to rush to put another deposit together, we could instead just slowly pay off those mortgages, or alternatively just coast and let the tenants pay off the mortgages for us whilst we manage the properties. And you see, this is kind of the point of the episode. You see, it's all very well for anybody to go out there and try and retire early, but you might just find as you start your journey that at some point along the way, either one of 2 things happens. Either A, you realize that the amount of energy and effort needed to become financially independent simply isn't worth it. Or B, you actually discover something really awesome in your work life that changes your need to retire early. And this is certainly something that has happened to me over the last few months. I started a project recently that I just really enjoy, and it's a good long-term project. And it's one of those work situations where you get up in the morning and you go, this is great. I love the team. I love everything about the role. And I sort of sit there and go, well, what's the rush? It pays well, so I can still save and work away at the investment portfolio without needing to feel like I need to hurry because I'm already putting the perfect life together. In fact, in many cases, I would likely do the job whether I was getting paid or not. And it's a wonderful feeling. Of course, I may not always feel like this, which is why having some sort of portfolio in place is really important. But at the same time, to do work that you actually enjoy makes the whole process seem that much better. And all of a sudden, my need for feeling like I need to rush becomes that much less. I think so much has changed over the last 2 or 3 years since COVID came about. And I think for me, the RE aspect of the FIRE movement has changed. In many ways, I see the retire early concept be more about retiring from either A, something you don't like, or B, just from the corporate world in general. We have so many options now when it comes to designing the perfect life for us. We're so privileged in the developed world to have these options. I met Anthony tonight from the Limerick FI meetup group, and he was telling me that he's currently on a mini retirement. He's effectively taking 12 weeks off from his main work to pursue whatever he wants to do. And he happened to mention that he was currently looking at options around maybe doing 10 to 15 hours worth of work per week. And that quickly got me thinking that as much as the dream is to pursue early retirement, the truth is when we give ourselves that much time, it's very unlikely as humans that we're going to sit there and do nothing. Sure, look at me back in 2019 when I was working part-time. I set up hockey clubs, set up a new native woodland co-op, set up this podcast. I did all sorts of things that ultimately kept me busy. And I remember the fact that I felt like one of the reasons that I was doing those things was because I could. So when we truly reflect on our reasons for pursuing FIRE in the first place, it could be that maybe it's the 40-hour week that you don't like, or those pointless, long-winded meetings that we seem to find ourselves getting stuck into. I love that t-shirt that says, "I survived another pointless meeting that could have been handled in an email." And there's certain truth to that in the corporate world. And so in many ways, I do think that the traditional or initial FIRE movement has certainly changed, and perhaps it is time to redefine the definition of the FIRE movement. In many cases, I think that the FIRE movement is actually missing an acronym, which is the S in the middle: financial independence, semi-retirement, early. It was actually a bit of a follow-up on my The Great FIRE Myth episode that Tina from Money Flamingo tried to give her definition of early retirement and what it actually means. And she concluded in the article that retirement to her means exactly that: retirement and doing nothing. And that when we actually look at a lot of those who have retired early, they are far from doing nothing. So even in the case of someone like the mad scientist, who is clearly retired from a financial point of view and no longer earns money through a job per se, he's still recorded an album, he's still running his blog and receiving income from that, and possibly having other income sources that we're unaware of, but he certainly doesn't have a job. And so by Tina's definition, he is not actually retired. He could and should refer to himself as semi-retired, which is effectively what he is, but he certainly isn't fully retired by Tina's definition. And as glad as I was that I did define my own version of retirement on the Great FIRE Myth episode, which was as per Mr. Money Mustache's definition, which was something along the lines of, well, if you're financially independent and could be retired, then sure, you should say that you are, and whether you go and work a job because you love it, well, you're still retired. And you know what? On reflection, I think maybe I was wrong, and that Tina might have actually been hitting more of a nail on the head. Most of us are looking for semi-retirement, and whether our portfolio is 100% of what we need or only half, it probably doesn't matter. Of course, one of the challenges that I've had to learn is that this FIRE stuff is really, really addictive, and savings is addictive. I've found recently that buying houses is addictive, and so all of that seems to find a way to make us be trapped at work. The last 18 months for me has been extremely stressful and hard. As much as I like to sit there and get up and say, yeah, it's not so bad, and look, I'm able to put myself in that mindset, it is a grind. I've had episodes on this in the last 12 months talking about the fact that it is a grind. In many ways, it's like balancing lots of different plates at once. I'm just overworked, and typically there isn't enough time in the day, or at least I don't have enough energy to get everything done. And yes, it's certainly been worth it from a financial point of view, but I do have some regrets when it comes to some of the other aspects of my life, including my own mental health, my own fitness levels and so on, and then also the impact that that might have long term on my relationship with my wife and kids, which I guess for the most part is very, very good anyway, and they've been extremely supportive of me doing this, but it certainly has a time limit, and I think 18 months and coming close to that mark now is certainly that. So where will that leave us? Well, we should have a portfolio of roughly 400,000 euros, which is pretty much bang on half of what we feel like we need. We're currently pursuing the idea of building a portfolio of up to around 800,000 euros to get fully retired. But here's the thing, we don't really need to be in a rush to get there anyway. The compounding interest calculators start to become far better when the portfolio hits a certain number. And the reality is, if I were to stay on the current path of saving around 10,000 euros per month, we would hit full FI in about 3 years. However, if I were to reduce that savings amount by half and only save around 5,000 euros per month, then we would get there in 5 years, only an extra 2 short years to hit our number. And I think that's really, really interesting, because I could have a far better lifestyle trying to hit a number in 5 years rather than 3. But in many ways, all of this is a moot point. And this is really the crux of the episode, and the reason that I think why the traditional FIRE movement is somewhat dead. And it's because the real answer isn't in the numbers. The real answer is in the question, what would you do when you hit your FI number? And the truth is, if you can't answer that question, you need to really ask yourself, why am I on this journey in the first place? Don't get me wrong, being financially independent would be a great feeling, but truthfully, even getting, say, 100,000 euros in your portfolio is a good feeling, because it gives you options. Whether you've got 100,000, 500,000 or 1 million, that feeling is still going to feel roughly the same. You've still got enough power there to be able to leave your job tomorrow if you didn't like it and find something new. For me, finding my why has been extremely important, and many of you guys know that I have been complaining at times about my work. And the truth is, there's a lot to love about what I do, and in many cases, it's just those little things that make it not so fun. And when I sit back and reflect, I realize that my early retirement, in quotes by the way, does include an element of working. So by Tina's definition from Money Flamingo, I won't be fully retired. Therefore, I should account for that when I plan for my early retirement. And here's the kicker. If we do plan correctly, and if we do start planning a life based on if we were retired today, the day we hit our FI number, our life should be no different, because we should have already built our perfect life. I think it's quite enjoyable when you sit back and watch my progress month to month and see our portfolio growing. And as I mentioned, it is extremely addictive. But at the same time, I'm actually missing the entire point. I would be far better to track my progress towards building the perfect life than I would tracking the actual numbers that are behind it. Because the numbers mean nothing if we get to our FI number and our life isn't what we wanted it to be in the first place. In fact, we would have done nothing but have wasted a whole lot of time grinding to try and find some sort of pot of gold at the end of an FI rainbow. So no matter where you are on your journey, go out and think, am I working and helping myself to building a better life? Or am I grinding this out because I'm more worried about the numbers than I am about my actual overall happiness, which at the end of it is what this whole movement is all about. As always, if you have any questions on this episode, drop me an email at michael@firepodcast.ie. And just a reminder, you can follow my monthly updates by subscribing to my newsletter at firepodcast.ie. As always, I look forward to catching you on the next episode.